Good afternoon everyone, my group and I will be taking you through a closer look into GHD Australia. The major points we will be outlining are as follows. Introduction of GHD Australia, GHD's sustainable source of competitive advantage, GHD's principal economic and industry characteristics, GHD's SWOT analysis, and GHD's international strategy. Now for a brief introduction of GHD. They were established in 1928 and currently operate in 5 continents including Asia, Australia, Europe, and North and South America. They are one of the world's leading professional service companies operating global markets of water, energy and resources, environment, property and buildings, and transportation. They also provide services in engineering, architecture, and construction to public and private sectors. They currently employ 8,500 people in 200 plus offices and are driven by client service-led culture. They create lasting community benefits using knowledge, skill, and experience of people. They improve physical, social, and natural environments in places they operate, and their mission is to exceed the expectations of clients and contribute to their success. To answer this part, we must define what a sustainable competitive advantage is. It is when an organization is able to maintain and implement a strategy that creates superior value for customers as well as making it difficult for competitors to imitate or duplicate. It is essential to earning above average returns, and an organization's resources and capabilities create core competencies and become a source of competitive advantage. Under the resource-based view, in order to be considered a source of competitive advantage, they must satisfy 4 criteria. It must be valuable, rare, inimitable, and non-substitutable. So what capabilities does GHD have that gave them a sustainable competitive advantage over its competitors? In the words of the general manager, if you can attract and retain good people, then you've got a tremendous competitive advantage. Now to talk about the Innovation Zone. It is an internal online portal that connects employees from all over the world to collaborate and share new ideas. Ideas include ways to improve internal processes and taking commercial opportunities. All employees are given support and are encouraged to use the program. A committee called the Innovation Advisory Group gives honest feedback to all submissions and chooses those that will potentially add value to the organization. This has sustained employee interest through mutual respect and also resulting in employee loyalty to the company. The zone ultimately inspires staff to be more creative and to let them know that all ideas are valued and developed. Now to talk about business school model training. It is formal training involving management, leadership, and personal development. This allows for consistency as well as economies of scale. GHD has created some of the programs but has also outsourced them. This helps employees to meet their own desires and assist them in developing their full potential. As stated earlier, GHD operates in multiple markets. We will take a look at the competitive advantage GHD has in some of its markets. Integrated project delivery is using business structures and processes to draw insight of each participant in design and construction process. The latest software in building information modeling to design and analyze its projects. BIM for short provides clash detection when things will not work and phasing to create optimal results. There is an application of Revit, architecture, and robot structural analysis which allows fully integrated model to capture each element until completion. IPD provides a multi-dimensional approach to project development, and it is working in reference to a self-established set of social and environmental performance aims for building design so that operations are consistent. Integrated water management delivers solutions that improve water efficiency and provide a balance for communities as well as environmental needs. It compiles water supply and treatment, wastewater, and stormwater to develop better water systems and livable areas. This toolkit incorporates 80 years of experience of water cycle and helps achieve sustainable outcomes. Water efficiencies prioritize the consideration of the triple bottom line framework to minimize carbon footprint. Lastly, intelligent transport systems. Users demand the use of benchmark technology to make infrastructure better. ITS involves computing and electronics with information technology to provide the best solutions to transport issues. ITS is assisted with the knowledge and skills of engineers in areas of road, traffic, rail, and electrical. All these capabilities listed are the reason why GHD has established a sustainable competitive advantage in their respective markets.
Now on to the principal economic and industry characteristics for GHD. In order to determine what these characteristics are, we must first take a step back and discuss the external environment as a whole. As depicted in the diagram shown, the external environment comprises of three sections: the industry environment, competitor environment, and the general environment, which consists of 7 segments as shown on the outside of the diagram. For the purpose of this case study, we will take a further look into the industry environment and the economic segment alone. An industry can be defined as a group of companies offering products or services that are close substitutes for each other. That is, products or services that satisfy the same basic customer needs. In order to conduct an analysis of the industry, we define the boundaries of GHD's operations to be within the professional services industry. The professional services industry consists of industries that primarily involve services to other businesses, including engineering, design services, scientific services, IT services, and more. GHD operates well within this industry, specializing in delivering services related to engineering, management, design, environment, science, architecture, and consulting. According to a published in the Harvard Business Review by Michael Porter, understanding the forces that shape industry competition is a starting point for developing strategy. Every company should already know what the average profitability of its industry is and how it's been changing over time. The 5 forces explained in Porter's model reveal why industry profitability is what it is. Only then can a company incorporate industry conditions into the strategy. The first of the forces explained in Porter's model is the threat of new entrants. When there are high entry barriers and a low threat, there tends to be an increase in profitability for existing firms. In GHD's case, the professional services industry is highly competitive due to low barriers to entry. The level of market share in a given industry dictates the attractiveness of it to new entrants. In relation to GHD Australia, according to IBISWorld, the 4 biggest players in the industry only account for 4.2% of industry revenue. This strengthens the fact that the market is not monopolized and is still attractive for new entrants. The second factor in Porter's model relates to the bargaining power of suppliers. In a given market, depending on the amount of suppliers, certain firms have more power when conducting their operations with buyers. In GHD's case, there is a large amount of suppliers in the industry, and hence a high level of competition, leaving less power with the suppliers. However, GHD has still managed to stay on top of the industry by widening the gap between themselves and competitors in terms of power due to their highly valued services and high switching costs for buyers as a result. Following this, the next factor explores the bargaining power of buyers in the industry. Buyers purchase a significant portion of a seller's annual revenues. For the most part, the buyers of professional services don't pose a significant threat to the industry, as the industry's products are not standardized. The services GHD provides are tailored to the needs of the consumer, and a buyer would not be able to replicate that to a point that would make an impact in an already competitive market. The fourth factor that Porter spoke of was the threat of substitute products. Given the nature of the professional services industry, the threat of substitute products is unlikely to be significant. As GHD provide a service to their customers, it is difficult to replicate this service in a different way outside of this industry. You could argue that technology could eventually cause an overlap between industries, however, as of now, that is just speculation. The fifth force of Porter's model analyzes the intensity of rivalry among competitors. There is a high level of intensity within the industry due to a large amount of suppliers that are competing for market share. Key competitors such as Oricon, SMEC, and Erup are all finding ways to get ahead of their competition. It is worth noting that GHD and SMEC went as far as to form a joint venture in order to put themselves ahead of their competition. Now onto the economic characteristics GHD experiences in the general environment. The economic segment refers to the nature and direction of the economy in which a firm operates or may compete in. GHD operates in multiple economies due to their international scaling of operations and hence experience and have to adapt to the current economic conditions of each region. GHD Australia, for example, experienced a moderately strong average GDP growth of 2.5% over the last 4 years according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics. This is good considering Australia's size as a whole. The professional services industry, especially in Australia, has benefited from the growth of investment in infrastructure. GHD and companies alike have had a substantial contribution to economic growth in both employment and productivity improvements. In relation to the Australian economy, Australia's trade balance, as shown in the graph below, has shown improvements over the course of the last 5 years. Whilst GHD may not directly be associated with all of that foreign net exporting, the improvements still provide a strong economy with adequate levels of inflation and other economic conditions for GHD to strive in. The same applies to GHD's operations in other countries, whereby they selected the optimal economies to conduct their business in.
Alright, so now we're moving on to GHD's SWOT analysis, considering the internal aspects of it, being the strengths and the weaknesses. The principal purpose of a SWOT analysis is to generate a firm-specific strategy business model which best aligns with its resources and its core competencies with the demands of the surrounding industry environment in which it operates in. For GHD, this involves considering its internal strengths and weaknesses and developing strategies to exploit the opportunities and minimize the risks it faces from the global professional services industry. So the main strengths that GHD possess is that it's a truly global financial service provider. As you can see from the graph, last year it recorded 1.68 billion Australian dollars in revenue, demonstrating the sheer mass of its financial resources and its ability to contribute to fund future business growth. GHD represents a diverse business network which operates across 5 sectors and throughout more than 135 countries, highlighting its international prominence. GHD's strategic vision is additionally transparent, providing its clients, investors, and itself a clear idea as to what it aims to achieve. By 2020, GHD aspires to operate under one brand, be a top 5 privately owned company in the professional services industry, and represent a connected global network. In 2008, GHD implemented an initiative to boost efficiency of its internal processes. Within this program, staff make recommendations within an internal online framework known as the Innovation Zone, which allows them to suggest ways to enhance internal mechanisms or ideas regarding business operations. The Innovation Zone has demonstrably increased staff engagement within management processes and has fostered trust, innovation, and creativity among staff members. The main weakness that GHD possesses is the fact that it has tainted its own brand image. This occurred when GHD was involved in the defrauding of a fund setup for victims of the Indonesian Boxing Day tsunami, which resulted in the World Bank banning them for a year from bidding for contracts in 2013. Such unethical behaviour can have painted GHD in a negative light and thus tainting its brand image, which can have adverse effects on its profitability in the future. Now moving on to the next segment, we'll look at GHD's opportunities and threats that it faces from its external environment. So GHD has recently and historically been able to capitalise on acquisition, merger and joint venture opportunities. In doing so, it has been able to expand its market presence and broaden its local and international expertise. For example, this year, GHD merged with an American engineering organisation, CRA, to diversify its business services and broaden its international presence. Additionally, in 2015, GHD merged with CRA to broaden its engineering and environmental consulting services. GHD has an extensive history of mergers and acquisitions, and continuing this trend provides the organisation greater opportunity to expand its market presence and extend its competitive advantage. GHD has also widened its market access pathways, demonstrated in the establishment of GHD Advisory in 2016. Here, GHD can compete with other business advisory firms in Australia by providing asset management consulting, risk advisory and strategic consulting services to a range of clients. This can potentially spur growth and profitability for GHD. Further, an economic resurgence, particularly in the USA, where a large portion of GHD's operations are based, has seen a surge in the demand for professional services. Increased demand can intuitively add to GHD's growth and profitability. Additionally, the growing issue of climate change has been positive for GHD's environmental consulting services, which has resultantly attracted increased demand. Looking at the threats now, the main threats that GHD face are the fact that the global reach of GHD's operations pose issues for obtaining credit for local projects. For instance, while cash rates in the UK and Australia's central banks are low, cash rates in other countries like China and Papua New Guinea, where GHD conducts operations, relatively high at 4.8 and 8.25% respectively. This can severely impact the profitability of investments in these countries. Further, due to weaker trends in commodity prices, GHD has attempted to extract much of its revenues from projects outside of Australia, which increases its vulnerability to fluctuations in the foreign exchange market. Lastly, adverse market conditions can also harm growth prospects for GHD. For instance, dives in the energy and commodity markets last year severely hampered GHD's profit margins, which was localized to the US. Upon considering GHD's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, we can now recommend a variety of strategies. An opportunity strength strategy uses strengths to capitalize on opportunities. Here we recommend GHD use its large financial resource base to continue to engage in international mergers and acquisitions to further increase its market share and global presence. A threat strength strategy involves using strengths to minimize threats. Here we recommend GHD invest in Western markets to minimize political risk, invest in markets with low cash rates to reduce credit risk, and continue its investment in innovation and technology to improve and to allow it to quickly react when adverse market changes occur. An opportunity weakness strategy uses opportunities to improve weaknesses. Here, GHD could acquire rival firms with positive brands and reputations to improve its own brand reputation. Lastly, regarding threat weakness strategies, we recommend that GHD ensure its credit payments are swift to improve its credit rating, contributing to a positive brand image.
According to Anderson and Gattignon, internationalizing companies have to find a suitable organizational structure in order to manage foreign activities effectively when they enter foreign markets. For GHD, they adopted a transnational approach that is essentially a mixture of both multi-domestic and global strategies. GHD incorporated this method as scaling operations internationally requires both global coordination and localized flexibility. It has been claimed by multiple economists that the foreign market entry mode choice determines a firm's degree of resource commitment to the foreign market and the level of control they exercise over foreign activities. GHD has entered into foreign markets through a number of entry modes, one of which is through acquisitions. GHD has acquired a number of companies worldwide as a means of expansion across borders. GHD has also taken part in multiple strategic alliances, collaborating with firms on certain projects for market entry. For example, GHD established itself in China through a joint venture with Rankin and Hill, and then further expanded throughout China through multiple acquisitions of various companies. GHD has accumulated an enormous amount of benefits from their international ventures. The first of these is their increase in market share. GHD almost doubled its market presence in 2014 according to their annual reviews after closing a deal with a key Canadian provider of environmental engineering. GHD has experienced an increase in services provided as well as expanded into 100 more offices employing 2,500 more staff since 2010, despite being in the same amount of markets. GHD also achieved the rank of number 26 of the top 200 environmental firms worldwide due to their scaling of operations on an international level. Furthermore, GHD has experienced significant improvements through economies of scale and learning. Economies of scale refer to the savings in cost gained by the increased level of production and output. By increasing overall output through going global, GHD improved upon their information sharing capabilities of industry-specific knowledge to certain regions. Links can also be made back to their business school model training, which promotes greater performance through learning. The third major benefit derived from the international strategy is their location advantages. Not only do they experience cost savings for expenses such as transport due to closer proximity to buyers, they also operate in countries with advanced conditions such as China and USA that provide the optimal environment for financial success. GHD also faces political risk from the diverse range of countries in which it operates. Political risk is relevant to GHD as the political decisions in foreign nations have the capacity to adversely impact its business growth and profitability. GHD has an overwhelming presence in Asia, Africa, and almost all South America, where levels of political risk are relatively high to Western markets. Political instability in developing countries, as well as highly fluctuating trade tariffs, labor laws, environmental regulations, and currency changes all pose to threaten the global profitability of GHD. Political risk is not only exclusive to developing countries, with Australia's foreign debt being ranked as one of the worst. Standard & Poor's ratings noting, Australia will have one of the weakest external positions financially out of the 130 sovereign states which they rate, if this trend is to continue. Extended budget deficits can have severe national economic implications that would threaten GHD's prominence in the Australian market. Overall, GHD's international strategy has proven to be quite successful, however there are still areas that need improving. This concludes our presentation on the overall analysis of GHD both within Australia and on an international scale. Thanks for listening.